التحية لكم المشاهدين الأحباب وين ما كنتوا. لكل الطلاب الممتحنين والجالسين للشهادة السودانية هذا العام بنقدم الحصة اليوم مادة اللغة الإنجليزية مع الأستاذ أحمد موسى رشاش. هاي مستر رشاش.
مرحبا. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. في البدء أرجو أن أشكر أسرة برنامج بيتنا على هذه الفرصة الثمينة التي قد وضعتها لنا حتى نستطيع أن نقدم ما يفيد طلابنا في امتحان الشهادة السودانية إن شاء الله. وكثير من الطلاب اتصلوا بي وطلبوا حقيقة أن تكون حصتنا في composition writing. Now I'm going to change my tongue. To change my tongue. Tongue here means language. That means I'm going to speak in another language. I'm going to speak in English. I'm going to begin by talking about writing compositions as it is asked by some of the students. In the beginning, I must tell the students that a composition, this is the definition of the composition. We can say what is a composition. The composition is a piece of writing which is organized and connected. This is number one. The students must remember that a composition is a piece of writing which is organized and connected. Again, it has a number of paragraphs. We will come and talk about the paragraphs in detail. When we come to write a composition, we must remember the following points. The first point, we begin a paragraph by leaving a space of an inch or 1 inch from the left margin. This is the first point. Point number two, we can use as simple English as possible when we write. Number three, our handwriting should be clean. It should be very clean. That means it must be clean and at the same time it must be readable. Point number four is very necessary. We must avoid the grammar and the spelling mistakes, and we can do this by practicing writing again and again. The last point to be remembered, our writing must have punctuation marks. By the punctuation marks, we mean the full stop, the question mark, the exclamation mark, and so on. Dear students, you must remember that composition has certain parts. Technically speaking, when we speak technically, we can say that composition is divided into three parts. The first part of the composition is the introduction. The introduction, in fact, is only one paragraph in length. It can be only 4 lines. It should not be very long. The second part of the composition is the composition body. The composition body is usually more than 1 paragraph. It contains detailed information about the topic that we want to talk about. The last part of the composition is called conclusion. It is the last part of the composition. This is number one. Okay? It is only 1 paragraph in length. Again, it contains the last piece of information about the topic that we are tackling. Again, the writing or the writer's opinion about the topic can be expressed in this part of the composition. The last option, we can write solution to the problems that we have already written in the composition body. In fact, the students must remember that the composition has a number of types, but you have to know these 4 types. We can say types of composition. A composition can be, number 1, descriptive composition. By descriptive composition, we mean the composition in which we describe a certain thing. We write in the present tenses. When we come to write a descriptive composition, we must remember that we use the present tenses. The second type of the composition is called argumentative. I'm going to pronounce this word again. It is called argumentative. We write the argumentative composition in the present tenses. For example, we can write about the topic which says girls' education is necessary. Discuss. I must tell you that the writing of the argumentative composition is in the present tenses. Then we come to the third kind of composition, which is called the narrative. By the narrative, we mean the stories. Of course, when we come to write a story, we are going to write the events of the story. And then we write this kind of composition in the past tenses unless there is direct speech within the composition. Then we come to the last kind of composition, which is called letters. We write the letters in present or past tenses accordingly. By accordingly, we mean, suppose I want to write a letter to my friend so-and-so, telling him about my visit to a certain place. In this case, I'm going to use the past tenses. But if I am asked to write about, let me say, the places of tourism in Sudan, and I want to describe this to a pen friend, in this case, I'm going to use the present tenses. That's why I'm saying we use either the present simple or the past simple accordingly. We shall discuss, let me say, the writing of letters in our following lessons. Now, I'm going to give you an example for writing a composition. Before we begin writing the composition on the blackboard, I want you to prepare a piece of paper and a pen so that we can follow together how to write a good example of a composition. Before I go to talk about the kind of composition, let me say the writing of the composition, you must remember that the writing of composition depends completely on practice. And you remember, we have a proverb or wisdom which says practice makes perfect. That means if I want to be a good composition writer, I must practice writing again and again. I must not be afraid of making mistakes. I can make the first, let me say I can write the first composition, I'm going to make some mistakes, then I will take my composition to the teacher is going to mark that composition, and then I am going to write for the second time, for the third time, until I become a good composition writer. So you must believe in this wisdom. Practice makes perfect. That means the more you practice, the more you become perfect in writing. Now, we are going to have an example for a composition. If you look at, yes, what we have here, the topic for our composition today is as follows. Write, let me say, write a composition of about 180 words on water. And this is what is asked in the examination. In the examination, they ask you to write a composition, and the length of the composition should not be less than 120 words and not more than 80 words. Use the following points to write your composition. Before I start writing the composition with you, I must read the points for you so that they can be clear for everybody who is watching the TV now. Water, necessary for life, liquid, solid, vapor, found in rivers, seas, etc. Then the second point, the advantages of water. All living creatures need it. It here refers to water. Use water in industry. Use water in industry. Again, water used to generate electric power. We have the disadvantages. I'm sorry. We have more uses about water. Here we have irrigating plants. We use water to irrigate plants.